Hello there, I'm Haiti Adams in for Esther Gitui-Hewitt. It is Tuesday, July 19th, and this is Africa 54.
As Kenya prepares for general elections to vote for their next president and local leaders, the economy takes center stage as a campaign issue. African leaders, wildlife conservationists, and experts gather in Kigali for the first ever continent-wide Africa Protected Areas Congress. And Ethiopia's wheat production is expected to jump 70% this year as it seeks to reduce reliance on food imports.
And we begin our broadcast in Kenya, where the economy appears to be taking center stage as the East African country prepares for its presidential and local elections. VOA's Paul Ndio has more.
The war in Ukraine is driving rising global food and fuel prices. 2 years of the COVID pandemic have left millions of Africans facing food insecurity. In Kenya, the National Bureau of Statistics says the country's inflation has hit an all-time high of 7.9%, forcing thousands to demonstrate in the streets, calling for a boycott of the elections because of the cost of living. Kenya's political leaders are noticing, perhaps for the first time, that voters are very angry, and as a result they have shifted campaign politics from personality and ethnic politics to economic development and growth. Like thousands of other protesters are carrying banners, calling themselves the movement of the hungry people and the hunger revolution. A Kenyan mother and grandmother waves an empty plate, demanding that food prices come down.
Please bring the price of flour down, because without the flour, we cannot cook our ugali or make porridge and drink. But now there is no flour, there's no food, and we are hungry. I don't recognize my country anymore. Is this our country? We are not refugees. We are Kenyans. Please treat us as Kenyans.
In the impoverished neighborhoods of Mathare, Atieno cares for her 12 grandchildren here while her 2 daughters go out looking for odd jobs. According to figures by Kenya's Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, voter registration among people under the age of 35 is dropping, and voter apathy among the youth is rising.
People are dissatisfied with the current state of our politics. Many Kenyans are preoccupied with the economic situation, the cost of living, and other, in their view, far more important things taking place in their own lives from a day-to-day basis. So I don't think it's any one single factor that's driving the voter apathy. But possibly a perfect storm.
Meanwhile, presidential candidates are making promises and assertions to Kenya's poor on tackling endemic corruption, rising public debt, and providing vulnerable families with stipends or credit and loans, without explaining in detail how they are going to do it. During a press conference with international media in Nairobi, presidential candidate Raila Odinga addressed the issue of polling violence.
If people see that the process is free and fair up to the polling day, after the tallying and the announcement of the results, there really should be no fear of violence erupting.
Earlier this month, a presidential candidate William Ruto also spoke to the international media. He's confident in winning the election and says the economy is a top priority.
We have largely managed to pull away from the usual competition around ethnicities and those kind of things to a space where we're discussing issues that apply to all Kenyans. Cost of living, the economy, creating jobs.
On August 9th, 22 million Kenyans are eligible to vote. Many of them live below the poverty line, so the cost of food and fuel will play a significant role in the election as voters cast their ballots. Paul Ndiho, VOA News, Washington.
Well, for more on the upcoming Kenya elections and how important the economy is on the minds of voters, I'm joined live via Skype from Nairobi by Professor Macharia Munene. He's a professor of history and international relations at the United States International University in Nairobi. Professor Munene, thank you so much and welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you.
Professor, you know, in times of elections, and certainly Kenya is not an outlier where this is concerned, economies are reeling across the globe. But in times of elections, of course, there's lots of focus and these things are magnified. We know that this is top of mind for Kenyan voters, but is the economy going to be the driver of people to the polls? Will that actually get them out to the ballot box?
It will help, but it should not be overemphasized. Yes, the major parties, candidates, have all turned their attention to saying what they will do about the poor economy, the increasing poverty, because the poverty is on the rise, and what it is that can be done. Now, there is a possibility of apathy being generated by the poor economy and the hardships that people go through. Sometimes you hear people saying, well, is voting worth it if this is what it means? So the big job is for the main candidates to convince the voters that they will be able to turn the economy around. And in saying they will turn the economy around, it's also a blame on the existing governing structure, because the same people who are, whether they are calling themselves opposition or in the government, they are all saying that the economy has gone down and they will do something about it. So convincing people is the issue that they should go and vote. There is some sort of apathy which needs to be dealt with.
Professor, often it is the job of candidates to convince the populace that they understand what people are going through. People like during election time to paint themselves as an everyday man and understanding what normal people have to go through on a daily basis. Do you think that messaging coming from the two frontrunner candidates, Raila Odinga and William Ruto, that message is being heard, is believed by ordinary people, that they understand and know the economic hardships that people are enduring at the moment?
Well, the two candidates are doing their best to pass the message, only that some of the promises are not believable, because people are asking questions, how are you going to do that? Right now there is a shortage of money around. Bills are not being paid here and there. And so when each of them comes up and says that he is going to pump in so much money into the economy within a short time, the question comes up, how are you going to do that in the first place? And why are you not doing it right now? Or why have you not done it before? So yes, they are all making very good promises of what they will do. And some of them may get a few more followers, but they are not doing a very good job of convincing people that they are capable of doing what they need to do in order to turn the economy around, because it is in the pit. And that one, they are having a problem explaining themselves. But they are doing their best. And the question is, who should be believed between the two of them as the two leading candidates? There are two others, but the others two are seen as sideshows. So the question of believability is the one.
Well, Professor Munene, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you so much for your time. Macharia Munene is a professor of history and international relations at the United States International University in Nairobi. We do thank you for your time. The U.S. military says it has killed 2 fighters from the Al-Shabaab terrorist group in an airstrike in the remote parts of Somalia's southern Jubaland state. The strike on Sunday was near Libikus in the lower Juba region, according to U.S. Africa Command. The United States is executing airstrikes in Somalia to try to defeat Al-Shabaab, an Al-Qaeda franchise seeking to implement its interpretation of Islamic law and overthrow the country's Western-backed central government. Well, more than 2,000 African leaders, wildlife conservationists and experts are gathering in Kigali this week for the first ever continent-wide Africa Protected Areas Congress. Eugene Uwimana has more for us from Rwanda.
The Africa Protected Areas Congress was organized in partnership with the International Union for Conservation of Nature and the African Wildlife Foundation. Discussions are turning around stimulating investment in biodiversity conservation for Africa to achieve a green developed economy.
Africa still holds 30% of the world's biodiversity, and this means we are more advantaged than we may think. And this conference this week provides the perfect opportunity to reset and remodel our aspirations of a modern Africa with a good representation of wildlife and wildlands. Protected areas offers us the anchor points for our future.
Rwanda, which is hosting this Congress, says preserving biodiversity is paying back. As a landlocked country with limited national resources, the government says tourism is greatly contributing to its development.
We are driven by the fact that conservation of biodiversity and sustaining our economy, our ecosystem, are key enablers in our promoting green and sustainable development. From our different green initiatives, Rwanda has now achieved its target of more than 30% of national forest cover.
Many conservation initiatives on the continent are funded by foreigners. Participants of the Africa Protected Areas Congress say are urging African governments to promote locally mobilized funds. The meeting started on Monday 18 and will run through 23 July. According to the International Union for Conservation of Nature, Africa has more than 8,600 protected areas, the size of Australia, or 25 times the size of the United Kingdom. The continent holds 30% of the world's biodiversity. For African conservationists, this should be turned into wealth for dwellers of the protected areas. Eugene Uwimana for VOA News, Kigali, Rwanda.
Ethiopia's wheat production is expected to jump 70% this year, despite an ongoing civil war and a record drought. Although the boost in wheat provides some hope, millions of displaced Ethiopians still need food aid, which is being distributed by Russia's war in Ukraine. Henry Wilkins reports for us from Samara.
On the outskirts of Samara, tractors prepare the soil to plant wheat. Known for its desert landscapes and dry climate, in Samara's Afar region, irrigated fields are a rare but increasingly common sight. The Ethiopian government's drive to plant more wheat means production of the grain will increase from 1.42 million tonnes last year to 2.4 million tonnes this year, according to government figures. Ghetto Kassa is one of the workers on the project.
The government aims for this program is to cover the demand from the market, reduce imports, and provide job opportunities for the population.
Hilma Ryan Abara, another worker, says the project has had a positive impact for him.
I used to work for 1,900 beer on another program, but now that this program has begun, I get 3,000 from it.
The government's goal is by next year to eliminate the need to import any wheat at all.
During the past year, we were planning to plant wheat on 8,400 hectares of land. We succeeded in implementing this goal through the cooperation of joint efforts between the Ethiopian government and the people. And we also strive to increase our efforts and up production even further.
However, the US Department of Agriculture says Ethiopia's goal to eliminate the need for imports next year is unrealistic. Ethiopia's need for continued food aid is clear, says an official from a non-profit in Samara.
Afar region has never been in a worse situation. We've got a situation that's doubled up between the effects of conflict and that of the drought, because the situation now is that the government says actually 95% of all Afar are food insecure.
The severe regional drought and Ethiopia's war between the central government and the Tigray region have left an estimated 20.4 million people in Ethiopia in need of food aid, says the UN's World Food Programme, WFP. Additionally, warring parties have been accused of blocking food from reaching vulnerable populations, while the UN says a fuel embargo on Tigray is also making matters worse. The wheat growing programme will not meet the country's needs, they say. The Ukraine crisis has reduced wheat imports and driven up the price of food by 66%, according to the WFP. At the same time, says the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization, Russia has imposed restrictions on fertilizer exports that could make growing wheat more difficult and expensive.
Countries like Ethiopia, obviously, that have been importing wheat and fertilizer get very badly affected.
For those most in need of food aid, any help in the form of wheat or otherwise cannot come soon enough. Henry Wilkins for VOA News, Samara, Ethiopia.
Well, still to come here on Africa 54, we'll have the latest on the deadly Marburg virus in West Africa. But first, here's a look at what's coming up on Wednesday's Straight Talk Africa. On the next Straight Talk Africa, what's behind the spate of mass shootings in South Africa? As police hunt the gunmen who went on killing sprees in bars and taverns, communities are directing their anger at police for failing to curb violent crime. We'll also discuss the life and legacy of the late José Eduardo dos Santos, who ruled Angola for nearly 4 decades. As Angolans prepare to go to the polls in August, we'll look at key moments of dos Santos' regime and how he shaped Angolan society and politics. Join me, Hayley Adams, on the next Straight Talk Africa. Welcome back. Let's take a look now at other headlines. The Democratic Republic of Congo's Hydrocarbons Ministry says it will offer 27 oil blocks and 3 gas blocks, nearly double as many previously planned, in next week's licensing round. Rached Ghannouchi, the leader of Tunisia's Islamist-inspired opposition party Ennahda, is being investigated amid allegations of corruption and money laundering linked to transfers from abroad to the charity Nama Tunisia, affiliated with Ennahda. And South African authorities say the deaths of 21 young people at a bar more than 3 weeks ago remains a mystery. That's as preliminary toxicology reports came back inconclusive. Well, it is time now for our health report, and joining us now is Africa 54's health correspondent Lenore Mudu with news on the mystery illness in Tanzania. Nice to see you, Lenore. Hello there.
Hello, Heidi. Well, Ghana is officially confirming its first ever cases of the deadly and highly infectious Marburg virus. This is only the second outbreak in West Africa. Ghana's health service says 2 people tested positive for the virus earlier this month and later died. Major outbreaks of Marburg have mostly occurred in southern and eastern Africa. The first case of Marburg in West Africa was detected in Guinea last year. Fatality rates from previous outbreaks have varied from 24% to 88%, depending on virus strain and case management, according to the World Health Organization. The WHO says the 2 Ghanaian patients in the southern Ashanti region both had symptoms, including diarrhea, fever, nausea, and vomiting, before dying in hospital. Ghana's health service says it is working to reduce any risk of the virus spreading, and all identified contacts have been isolated. It added, none of whom have developed symptoms so far. For the latest on this highly infectious disease, let's go live via Skype to journalist Francisca Kakra-Forston in Accra. Hello, Francisca. Bring us up to speed on what Ghanaian health authorities are doing to stop this outbreak from spreading.
Well, what we do know is that this is a matter of concern, and the Ghana Health Service has said that they have declared the Ashanti region a region on red alert. What this means is that they've got a surveillance team, they're working with the WHO, and they've got people on the ground monitoring the situation. And they're asking, for instance, they're engaging with the community members through public education and asking them to report any suspicious incidents. They're also cautioning people from getting into contact with live animals, for instance, bats. And they're asking people to cook their meat properly. So these are some of the things that we know. On the identified contacts, we know that about 98% of them, 98 people, were identified by the Ghana Health Service. The period within which the disease will manifest is 21 days. We know that yesterday was 21 days and today will be 22 days. The Ghana Health Service, we understand, has released the first batch of persons who were under isolation and quarantine after they came into contact with persons who died. They are going to have to wait another 21 days for the second batch of people under quarantine and isolation.
So, Francisca, is there more clarity in terms of the origin of this outbreak? It's the first time in Ghana.
Very little is known about the origin. I guess the Ashanti Regional Health Directorate indicated in their statement released on the 7th that they are investigating the deaths. These two cases, they say, are unrelated, although the two men reported to the same hospital. The belief is that they may have come into contact with bats. They are called fruit bats, and the belief is that these bats are the hosts of the Marburg virus.
Okay, Francisca, thank you so much, and we look forward to more updates from you. Thank you for joining us. That was Francisca Kakra-Forson reporting live via Skype from Accra. Each year, thousands of volunteer doctors, nurses, and other medical professionals travel abroad to donate their time and expertise, providing life-changing treatment and prevention services for people with low or no access to medical care. Experts say Africa has about 25% of the world's disease burden, but only about 3% of the health workers. For more insight, I spoke with Dr. John Fielder, co-founder and chief executive officer of the African Mission Healthcare.
The mission of AMH is to help people in greatest need to get the medical care they require. And our larger vision is to be part of the larger healthcare system in African countries and strengthening those systems so that they're sustainable and excellent in providing compassionate care to people. We're not talking about short-term medical mission trips. We're talking about long-term partnerships with mission hospitals that have usually been in their areas for 50, 75, or even 100 years. And what's happened over time is that a lot of these hospitals don't have the same connections with their founding agencies, so they don't always have the same access to resources that they once did.
How do you start this process?
So we actually come alongside the management of the hospital to listen to what they need. Some might need help with basic infrastructure. Like right now at a few hospitals, we're helping with water. We're sponsoring a number of pediatric surgery residents, and we help to start a cardiothoracic surgery training program in Kenya. So it really spans the gamut from pretty fundamental needs to much more advanced training and service delivery.
And what are some of the challenges that you are confronted with in this work, providing healthcare to populations and communities?
When we talk about the medical situation in Africa, there is a lot of frustration because there's so much need that's going unmet. But I think we do have to pay attention to the successes. For example, under 5 mortality rates have dropped in the last 25 years. Same with maternal mortality rates, but there's still a lot of work to do. I first came to East Africa, to Kenya 20 years ago, and the HIV epidemic was really out of control at that time. There was very little to offer patients. And the situation is way different today. There are so many patients who are living full and healthy lives. And our organization trained a lot of HIV clinical care providers. Graduates of our programs are out across the country right now, seeing patients, often leading big treatment programs themselves. If you're willing to stick it out over the long term, you can really see some amazing impact.
What about the aftermath? What is done to ensure that there is a sustainability?
The word sustainability, it's obviously a big buzzword, and it's an important term and concept, but I'm an American, and I know that the American medical system is heavily dependent upon government support. It's heavily dependent upon philanthropic support. It's not just what patients pay out of their pocket. And so if that's true in the richer parts of the world, then that really has to be true here too. We're not going to create an entirely self-sustaining system in just a decade or two.
There are often bottlenecks that are out of your control as someone who's going to a foreign country to work. What will make the work of a medical mission easier?
I think people really ought to think about a long-term commitment to a place or an institution. Often there are challenges beyond almost anyone's control. We support a number of clinics in South Sudan and in Sudan, and those are areas that have seen a lot of political instability. But even despite that, the healthcare workers have been incredibly committed and courageous, and that often includes teams of both missionary and African healthcare workers.
How do you envision the work of African mission healthcare in the next 5 years?
We really want to focus on building local capacity, because we know that if AMH were to cease to exist in 10 or 20 years, these hospitals are going to remain. We really want to come alongside those organizations to make them stronger, to expand their medical educational programs. One of the things that's really neat about some of these hospitals is that they may be in one part of Africa, but then they have trainees come from another part of Africa. And then those trainee graduates go back to their home countries, and they go back to care for and teach and train others.
What makes for a successful project? How do you measure success?
Over the longer term, we want to measure that success by the number of training programs and by the number of graduates of those training programs and what they're going on to do. We've been supporting some faculty members who come from a variety of countries, Nigeria, DRC, who are in Liberia right now, helping to train Liberian family medicine residents. And so, knowing that those Liberian family medicine residents will graduate from the program, fan out across the country, and some of them will then become the faculty members themselves, that's what success looks like.
That was Dr. John Fielder with the African Health Mission. And that's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on Twitter @LenorMoudou. Heidi?
Well, thank you very much, Lenore. It's very interesting to see the relevance, actually, of these medical missions. I think often we just don't realize how much good work they do.
Absolutely. That's right.
Well, be sure to watch Lenore Moudou's health report each Tuesday right here on Africa 54. And that is where we leave our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website, that is voaafrica.com. And from all of us here in Washington, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Until then, it's goodbye.